Hello and welcome to today's virtual event. Today's event is the second of the story of the Promoting Life Together Collaborative, a two-part virtual learning series. I'm Maria Judd, Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and Engagement with Healthcare Excellence Canada, and a very warm welcome to everyone joining us coast to coast to coast today. We're pleased to offer today's session bilingually. If you'd like to hear the presentation in French, please select French from the interpretation button located on your Zoom menu to hear the voice of our simultaneous interpreters. And we invite you to use either official language when entering questions, reflections, or comments in the chat box throughout our session today. And a reminder that today's session is being recorded and will be made available to participants in the coming days. You will see both French and English slides today on your screen throughout our event. And if you find them difficult to see, please know that all of the slides and the recordings are coming your way in the coming days as well. This photo that you see before you was taken after a sunrise celebration in Thompson, Manitoba. During a meeting of the Promoting Life Together Collaborative, members of the Northern and Indigenous Health Team stood alongside members of the team from Thompson and began their journey together in ceremony. And to ensure our virtual event today begins in a good way and in ceremony, I'm going to invite Dr. Ed Connors, a guidance group member of the Promoting Life Together Collaborative, to provide an opening prayer. Ed Connors is of Mohawk and Irish ancestry. He's a psychologist who has worked with First Nations communities across Canada since 1982 in both urban and rural settings. And his current work includes consultation and community training to assist First Nations in the development of restorative justice programs. And we're so pleased to have you with us, Ed, and I'll turn things over to you.
Now, thank you, Maria, for the introduction. And yes, welcome to all of you. And I was actually at this event when we opened that day on this wonderful piece of land in Thompson, Manitoba, at this lake edge. As we open today, we're also welcoming all of you in from across the country, from across our nation, from across what we would refer to in our Indigenous terminology as Turtle Island. And as we did so, we wanted to connect with you and have you give you the opportunity to also connect with one another in this virtual format that we're now gifted with, that enables us during these times where it's hard for us to gather face to face, but to actually have been able to continue our relationships and connections with one another virtually. And so today we offered this opportunity for you to identify where you're joining us from. And we're going to shortly show you where everyone is joining from. But I'm going to first just remind you that how we've invited you to identify where you're coming from. And we're doing so with recognition of Indigenous perspectives. And the perspective that we're offering to you is to think of where you come from in the ways in which our ancestors who are of Indigenous ancestry, my ancestors, who are of Indigenous ancestry from this land, from Turtle Island, how we once saw where we were from. We were of many nations, and we still are of many nations, of many cultures, many languages. And yet we lived upon what we would call Turtle Island as best we possibly could in peaceful ways. We identified ourselves not with the borders that we currently have since the period of colonization and since settlers came to this land. We once looked upon our relationships and our partnerships and where we came from as the land markings identified by the watersheds from which we traveled across the land on. They were our highways. And today we invite you to identify those where you're from in that way and think of how our ancestors once saw where they're from, the watersheds that they were from. So we identified the Arctic watershed, which includes the Northern Territories. We have a few people joining in now from there. Good to see you. I can see where you're joining from at the moment, and I'll show you shortly where you're all coming from. The Pacific watershed, of course, from British Columbia, the other side of the mountain range of the Rockies that flow, the waters that flow from there down into the sea, into the Pacific Ocean. We have the people who come from the prairie watersheds of Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and all those flat lands, the prairie lands, where the waters flow down across the surface of what we now refer to as the United States and into the Gulf of Mexico. And then we have people that are joining us from the Northern Shield watershed, which is the Ontario water basin that flows down into the Great Lakes. And as well, those from the St. Lawrence and Atlantic watershed of Quebec that we now refer to as Quebec, that flows out into the Arctic and into the Atlantic and into the St. Lawrence. And yet the other grouping being the Atlantic watershed of the New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, PEI, and all those territories that they're defined that way, but now are the watersheds of the St. Lawrence and the Atlantic Ocean and the Bay of Fundy. So yes, they were from across this country, from the land, and we also see some that come from outside of these watersheds, and invite you also to identify that you come from outside the watersheds if you choose to. We could show that poll now and show the results so that you can see each other and see where you're from. We've often find and reflect upon this is that it's kind of interesting because it creates kind of like a Christmas tree as we look across the lands from shore to shore, and the larger portion of the people joining us from the more of the central parts of the country, as opposed to the outside territories of the country. So anyways, this is a way of saying hello and welcome. And I'm going to now invite you into a prayer of gratitude as we begin our time together today. And this is, I'm going to share some slides with you that are going to help you to be able to see in your own mind's eye some of the thanksgivings that I offer. The prayer of gratitude gives thanks for all of what we have that supports our lives. And it's important in our Indigenous way of understanding our life and our life journey. We recognize that all of what comes to us as in terms of our lives comes through Creator, that we're gifted with life from Creator. And all of creation is part of what is gifted to all of us, and in terms of life that supports one another in many different ways. And so when we talk about this, we recognize that we use the terminology, all our relations, which means all our relations, not only all our human relations, but we actually recognize and reflect upon all of life, all of creation, because it is all part of the web of life that supports all of life, and that being gifted from Creator. When we offer this, we do so in recognition of all the ways that all of us connect to a Creator, if you indeed you see that as important in your life. And we recognize there are many ways in which we do this. When we do this, we do so with, and we offer it with respect, acknowledging all of those ways, and doing so without identifying and saying that our way is the only way, but rather the ways that we all have are all meant to be, and ways in which we can connect to our Creator. So I give you those thoughts, and I give you these thoughts as I offer this prayer of gratitude to reflect upon at this time in the world when we really need to be thoughtful and reflective of what we have been given that enables us to live in peace with one another and with all of creation. That, in fact, as human beings, it seems that we struggle the most of all the forms of creation to find the ways to live in peace. But we have those ways, and we have learned them, and they have been passed to us by our ancestors. So I offer this prayer with those thoughts in mind as we open this time together of sharing and begin for many of us our day. O bojomashomas bojonokomas wabano benese kwekwechkan. We give thanks, Creator, for this day. We're grateful for Brother Sun, who brings the light to this day so that we can see and appreciate the beauty of all of your creation. We give thanks for the warmth that Brother Sun brings to Mother Earth so that all of creation can grow to the fullest of their potential. And we give thanks, Creator, and we're grateful for the trees and for the plants. We're grateful that they continue to support our lives and provide of themselves to support our lives. We're grateful for the food plants and for the beautiful plants that bring the beauty to Mother Earth and provide the incredible gift of beauty of this creation. And we give thanks, of course, for the food plants that continues to sustain our lives. We're grateful, Creator, for the healing spirits that come this day through the Eastern doorway, that bring to us the gifts to help us to heal our physical beings so that we might live in peace this day with all of your creation. For these gifts, we are grateful. We're grateful, Creator, for this day, for the healing spirit that comes through the southern doorway. We're grateful for the waters, the medicine waters that give life to all of your creation. We're grateful for the water beings that live within those waters. And we're especially grateful and give thanks to those water beings who have given of their lives in support of our lives so that we might live. We give thanks, Creator, for that healing spirit that comes this day through the southern doorway, that brings to us the gifts to help us to wash away the hurts and pains from our minds, so that we might live in peace this day with all of your creation. For these gifts, we are grateful, and we say miigwech now. O Bojomashomas, Bojonokomas, Wabanobenese Quequechkan. We're grateful and we give thanks, Creator, for Grandmother Moon, who comes at night through the western doorway, rises in the sky, and guides us in the cycles of life and death, guides the female side of life in their special work with all of your creation. And we give thanks, Creator, for the healing spirit that comes this day through the western doorway and comes at night in the form of dreams, bringing to us the gifts to help us to see more clearly, to hear more clearly, to think more clearly, and to speak more clearly. We're grateful and we give thanks, Creator, for the winged ones. We're especially grateful for their gifts and for their teachings. We're grateful that they continue to support our lives with their lives. And we give thanks that they help us to wipe away the hurts and pains from our hearts so that we might live in peace this day with all of your creation. For these gifts, we are grateful, and we say miigwech now. O Bojomashomas, Bojonokomas, Wabanobenese Quequechkan. We're grateful and we give thanks for the healing spirits that come through the northern doorway this day. I'm grateful for the great white spirit bear, brother and sister, who guide us, teach us, and nurture us on our spiritual healing journeys. We're grateful for the four-leggeds who continue to guide us with their teachings, and we give thanks to them who have given of their lives in support of our lives so that we might live. And we're grateful and we give thanks, Creator, for the healing spirit that comes this day through the northern doorway, that brings to us the gifts that help us to endure the most difficult times of our lives, so that we might go through these times and become stronger and better human beings for them. For these gifts, we are grateful, and we say miigwech now. O Bojomashomas, Bojonokomas, Wabanobenese Quequechkan. We're grateful and we give thanks, Creator, to Mother Earth, to Akikwe, for her continued love and care and nurturing of our lives. We're especially grateful and we give thanks, Creator, that she continues to support our lives despite the disrespect and the harm we've caused her. And by doing so, she teaches us the lessons of unconditional love. For these gifts, we are grateful. And we say miigwech now. O Bojomashomas, Bojonokomas, Wabanobenese Quequechkan. We're grateful and we give thanks, Creator, for the healing spirit that comes through the sky world. We're especially grateful for the great thunder beings who bring the water, the medicine water, to Mother Earth to cleanse her, heal her, and nurture her so that she can continue to support our lives. And we're grateful, Creator, for the four winds that cleanse the air we breathe and bring to us the gifts of the four seasons. We're grateful for these gifts, and we say miigwech now. O Bojomashomas, Bojonokomas, Wabanobenese Quequechkan. We're grateful and we give thanks, Creator, for all those in your universe, for the sun, the moon, the stars, and all the planets, that they continue to live together in harmony and balance. And by doing so, they teach us the lessons we need to know to live in peace with all of your creation. For these gifts, we are grateful. O Bojomashomas, Bojonokomas, Wabanobenese Quequechkan. We're grateful for your continued care of Mother Earth. We give thanks, Creator, that you care for her and nurture her so that she can provide us with the medicines and with the medicine people who continue to help us on our healing journeys. And we give thanks, Creator, for our elders, that you continue to care for them, nurture them, heal them, and help them so that they might live in peace for the remainder of their time. For these gifts we're grateful. And we give thanks, Creator, for the healing spirit that guides us on our life's journey. For all these gifts, Creator, we're grateful. For those things that we have forgotten, we now draw to mind and we remember and give thanks for. And we say, Miigwech, Nyawa, all our relations. Now our minds are as one. I'll show, I don't know if you could show the actual results now. I think that's it. It's showing up now, Emer. So I'll pass it now. You can see where everybody is from. And I will now pass that over to Maria.
Thanks so much, Ed, for opening us in a good way today. And for those of you who've responded to our poll, we can see, as Ed has said, with the watersheds across the country that people are joining our virtual gathering today from. And we thank you for sharing your time with us today. I'd like to acknowledge that I'm grateful to be joining from my home office, which is located on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Nation, also known as Ottawa, where I'm very grateful to live, work, and play. And I want to recognize that the standard of living that we enjoy today is the result of the stewardship and the sacrifices of the original inhabitants of these territories. And coming together, we commit to not repeat past mistakes and to work towards more equitable and peaceful and respectful relationships with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. And invite you, if you're comfortable, to take a moment to introduce yourself using the chat and to reflect on the territory and the land that you're joining us from today. I'm grateful to be joined behind the scenes at Healthcare Excellence Canada by staff with our Northern Indigenous Health Team, Kaylee O'Connor, Mihaela Leib, Despina Papadopoulos, and they'll be operating our chat box today. And thanks to our producer, Kelly Ripley. And as we've seen, we are gathering from watersheds across the country today in our virtual room. We're also gathering with people who have shared that they're wearing diversity of hats and bring a diversity of perspectives, including administrators, consultants, nurses, researchers, quality improvement specialists, allied healthcare providers, Indigenous leaders, Indigenous organizations, patients, family members, and persons with lived experience. And thank you for joining us today. I'm also really grateful to be joined by our panelists today, who include Promoting Life Together Collaborative Guidance Group members, coaches and mentors, and Promoting Life Together Collaborative team members from Newfoundland. And I'm going to invite them to introduce themselves. So Bill, I'm going to hand over to you and invite you to introduce yourself first. I think you may be on mute still, Bill. I don't hear you yet. There we go. Okay.
Good morning. I'm William Julius Mussel Jr., named after my father and great-grandfather. He's said to be much like my great-grandfather, and I'm a proud member of the Coast Salish Solo People of the River in the beautiful Fraser Valley of British Columbia. It's been a pleasure to bring lived life experiences to this PLT collaborative journey that has drawn on my career as a professional educator, community builder, and leader dedicated to the promotion of Indigenous knowledge and other teachings of our ancestors. All my relations. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And Ed, would you like to add any words, additional words of introduction or welcome?
Sure, I will. So in addition to Ed Connors, I am known as Wabanobanese Kwekwechkan, which translates into English as the Eastern Thunderbird sounding, or the sound of the Eastern Thunderbird as it approaches. I'm from Kahnawake, Mohawk territory, as well as from the town of Mount Royal. My mother was born and raised in Kahnawake, my father in the town of Mount Royal overlooking Montreal. I am of Wolf Clan, and I'm also, I would often say that I am from two sides of the river, because the St. Lawrence River divides our communities of Kahnawake and Montreal. So as we speak today and share some of the knowledge that we've gathered through this collaborative, that we brought to the collaborative, you will also recognize the concept of two-eyed seeing and many concepts that speak to two worldviews, which come out of my experiences, both from my ancestry as well as from the experience that I walk in life. So thank you. Look forward to sharing some more with you as we go.
Thanks so much, Ed. Now, Cindy, I invite you to unmute and turn your camera on and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cindy Parsons, and I am a manager with Mental Health and Addiction Services in Stephenville, Newfoundland, servicing Stephenville and South with Western Health. I'm of Mi'kmaq ancestry, and I am happy that I was part of the Promoting Life Together collaborative within Western Newfoundland and Eastern Door Feather Carrier. Yep.
Hi, I'm Gail Hickey, and I'm a proud member of Halibut First Nation, and I'm from the west coast of Newfoundland, and I belong to the Eastern Door Feather Carrier, and yeah, I'm happy to be here today.
Thanks so much for joining us, Gail and Cindy. And now, Despina, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Ed, for the opening prayer. And as Maria mentioned, starting us off in a good way. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Despina Papadopoulos. I'm of Greek ancestry, and I'm a settler to this land and have the great privilege to be joining you from my home office, which is located on unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Nation, also known as Ottawa. My connection to the land, to my family, my friends, and my community are so closely tied to my wellness and really living a good life. And I also recognize that I benefit from the many sacrifices experienced by many First Nations, Inuit, Métis. I'm very mindful of the responsibility and ability that I and others have to listen, to learn, and to take action in very real and meaningful ways. My pronoun is she and her, and I'm a senior program manager with the Northern and Indigenous Health Team at Healthcare Excellence Canada. I'm very humbled to be here today and really appreciate being given the opportunity to connect with all of you.
Thanks, Despina. So today, I'll just tell you a little bit about the plan for our time together. The panel is going to discuss and share lessons learned regarding cultural safety, ethical spaces, and paradigm shifts within the collaborative and of Indigenous and non-Indigenous health organizations who supported the work. And so together, we're going to discuss key elements necessary to build ethical spaces, lessons learned for shifting paradigms to support relational work that encourages cultural safety, and how trust and ethical spaces were built to foster relationships and partnerships. And over the last year, the Northern Indigenous Health Team has been working closely with the Promoting Life Together Collaborative Guidance Group to develop some knowledge sharing products so we can share stories of the collaboration and the relationship development that was required to bring together the different worldviews and to facilitate the life promotion work of the Promoting Life Together Collaborative. And you can access some of these resources by following the link, which will be appearing in the chat box in a few moments. So for each of our topics, we're going to have 3 parts. The first part is we want to share a clip from the Promoting Life Together Collaborative, and then panel members will share their reflections with us. And then we invite you, our participants joining coast to coast, to share your reflections or questions you may have for the panelists using the chat feature. So the story of the Promoting Life Together Collaborative, which is really a story of collaboration and relationship development that was required to bring together different worldviews and to facilitate the life promotion work of the Promoting Life Together Collaborative, which involved teams from across the country. This story also shares the journey of non-Indigenous healthcare organizations working with and learning from First Nations and Métis leaders, organizations, and communities. And we'd like to share a little bit more about the journey that Healthcare Excellence Canada as a new organization has been on recently, as well as we enter into our time together today. So formed through the amalgamation of the Canadian Patient Safety Institute and the Canadian Foundation for Healthcare Improvement, almost a year ago, our focus is really on working with people across the country to shape a future where everyone across the country has safe and high quality healthcare. And I want to share with you our first organizational strategy and invite you to visit our website to learn more about our programs and our resources available and under development and upcoming opportunities to work with us to improve patient safety and quality with and for more people across the country. Many of the lessons that emerged from the Canadian Foundation for Healthcare Improvement and now Healthcare Excellence Canada's participation in the Promoting Life Together Collaborative, which we're talking about and sharing today, was really about enhancing our understanding of cultural safety and humility in practice, and how the foundations of trust and respect and reciprocity and relationship building and notions of readiness to be able to enact change and enter into new relationships and experience ceremony and spirit in our work together were foundational. And so this model of learning by doing has helped us to see culture as healing in many of the initiatives supported by teams across the country. And at Healthcare Excellence Canada, we recognize we are still learning, and we're continuing our commitment to be guided by the perspectives of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, to foster shared learning and to enhance relationships which we know then help enable cultural safety and humility in our health systems. And as Healthcare Excellence Canada, this commitment is embedded in our foundational documents and is reflected in our governance and in our new strategy and in a new programming coming soon. So I'm going to turn things over to Despina. We're going to share a clip to tell you a little bit more about the Promoting Life Together Collaborative. And then I'll invite Despina to share some reflections from Healthcare Excellence Canada and really what we consider the 7th team in the collaborative.
The Promoting Life Together Collaborative brought together teams from coast to coast to support the development of meaningful partnerships between regional health organizations and Indigenous communities to develop life promotion initiatives. 6 teams from across northern and remote regions in British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, Newfoundland, and 2 teams in Manitoba participated in the collaborative. As the convener of this initiative, our organization became the 7th team as it became very apparent that we were also learning alongside all of the teams. This 19-month initiative included coaching for each team by experienced knowledge keepers and service providers who mentored the teams to enhance their capacity for relationship and partnership building with Indigenous organizations and communities. The Canadian Northern and Remote Health Network brings together Northern health leaders to enhance leadership and to provide opportunities for shared learning and collaboration. In 2017, the network discussed their intention to focus on a suicide prevention life promotion collaborative in Northern and remote regions of Canada, and they requested support from the Northern and Indigenous Health Team of the Canadian Foundation for Healthcare Improvement. Indigenous knowledge holders and organizations, including the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation and First Peoples Wellness Circle, were subsequently asked if they were open to having conversations to explore partnership and to co-design a collaborative. The guidance group of the collaborative included a spiritual advisor, First Nations and Métis mental health leaders, a youth representative, an external evaluator, as well as representatives from national mental health organizations. This group supported the creation of guiding principles for the work of the collaborative, which focused on cultural humility, respect for Indigenous knowledge and diverse Indigenous voices, and an understanding of strength-based approaches to Indigenous health. Thank you, Maria. So what I've learned specifically through my experiences in the Promoting Life Together collaboratives as a member of what we call the 7th team is that readiness for non-Indigenous health organizations is really about being open to listening and learning and really understanding different worldviews and then making a commitment to working differently, we really focused on being relational, building trust, being mindful of assumptions, and unpacking our own biases and expectations. And we were guided by both Indigenous rights holders themselves and their supporting organizations, as well as individuals with lived experience. I have a tremendous amount of gratitude and appreciation for the guidance group and the other teams in the PLT collaborative, because at times we just really didn't know what we didn't know, and we made missteps along the way. And what we always tried to do was to be accountable for those missteps by learning from them and then really putting into action what we learned. We also put just as much emphasis on being relational and building trust with staff within our own organization. We provided staff with ongoing opportunities to learn from elders, spiritual advisors, and knowledge keepers. And we spent a lot of time together in ceremony, which really grounded us and helped us in our own readiness and building culturally safe spaces. We also had support to be flexible with corporate structures, with timelines and processes, and really to allow process to unfold and have the work be guided by Indigenous perspectives and voice. We recognized that how important it was for organization to also honor, respect, and protect traditional and Indigenous knowledge, which is very different from Western knowledge. And in order to work in a good way, we needed to enhance and sometimes develop new processes, protocols, or policies. And as the convener of this initiative, we learned that we must always seek permission when it comes to the sharing of traditional or Indigenous knowledge, and also be respectful and understanding if permission is not given. Our journey together was definitely not perfect. However, it was our journey. And whether we realized it at the time, what we were doing as the 7th team of the Promoting Life Together collaborative really supported our own organization's readiness and ongoing journey towards truth and reconciliation. At this time, I'd like to now invite Cindy and Gail, members of the Eastern Door Promoting Life Together, Inspiring Hope, Meaning, Purpose, and Belonging Western Health Newfoundland team, to share a little bit more about their work with the PLT Collaborative. So Cindy and Gail, over to you.
Okay, hi. Sorry about the little delay. We had a little small technical difficulty. As mentioned before, we're joining to you from Western Newfoundland, and we just want to acknowledge the land that we live on and enjoy. And we want to acknowledge the Indigenous ancestry and the Indigenous peoples of the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, the Inuit, Métis, Mi'kmaq, and Beothuk from Newfoundland. Our involvement with the Promoting Life Together came initially from Western Health's involvement with the Canadian Foundation for Healthcare Improvement. And the Promoting Life Together collaborative partnership was very much I guess, a team effort and partnership between Western Health and Halapu First Nation. And initially, we got a number of people together. We did some work through focus groups to really find out what we needed to do in our community to promote life and to, I guess, enhance programs and services for people of the province. Our project had 3 main goals. The first goal was to enhance the connection and the continuum of service for people in our communities. And with that, we connected Western Health and Halapu and other Mi'kmaq groups and services to develop a better service continuum to enhance support and access to services for what people needed in both systems. The second goal we had was to increase cultural competency for mental health and addiction service providers across Western Health. And really move people from along the continuum from cultural awareness to cultural safety. Western Newfoundland has a large Indigenous population, and we knew that many of the people that were accessing services, both service providers and people that with lived experience and accessing services, needed to have a change in the way that we delivered programming. Our final goal was to implement the Eastern Door Feather Carriers Project. And that was really what took the majority of our work. And through that, members of Western Health, Halapu, St. George's Indian Band, the Newfoundland and Labrador Women's Network, People of the Dawn Indigenous Friendship Center, Indian Cove Women's Circle, and elders in the community came together from the areas of Bay St. George region, Corner Brook and North, and the Bay of Islands region of Western Newfoundland to do the Feather Carriers training program, in which we had Ed Connors and John Rice and Kelly Brownbill together to be leaders in that for us. And I'm happy to report that in June of 2019, after a year-long intensive training and gathering together, that we had our graduation. And in the picture that's you see on your slide, 27 individuals graduated from the Feather Carriers program and accepted feathers to continue the work of life promotion, not only in Bay St. George and Corner Brook and North areas, but really as moving forward in their life work within Newfoundland and Labrador and wherever we may be. The impacts of our program are far-reaching, with many examples, so many examples of positive connections, personal growth, and really being able to shift a language and thinking. We really moved from the language of suicide prevention to life promotion, and really recognizing the importance of culture to healing, and many life promotion activities along the way. So the ripple effect really was felt within the community, our bigger community, but within the regions, but also we were able to share some of our work within the province and even across the country. We presented as part of one of our initiatives was we presented to the Canadian Suicide Conference in St. John's, Newfoundland, the year that we were doing our training. So we were able to kind of share some of the things, the messages that we had learned and the activities that we were participating in. The main thing that we really noticed was that it really grew our circle. The collaborative really helped individuals, groups, and organizations within the community to come together for a common purpose. We really looked at culture as a foundation for not only service providers, but people in the community to really look at at how culture can really lead people to living the life that they want, and that in order to heal and in order to move forward in any type of journey, they need to follow the purpose, hope, meaning, belonging, the foundation principles of the First Nations mental health wellness continuum. And really through the whole organization, through the whole, I guess, partnership, it really had a lot of ripple effects in the way that we changed service delivery within Western Health, and also the way that we connected with other people within the community.
Thanks so much, Cindy and Gail. And I just would invite you to reflect on and share how ceremony has factored into the work that you've done or that you're doing at a project level.
Hi, culture really was the foundation of our work. All of our work with life promotion focused on the principles of the First Nation mental health, wellness, purpose, hope, meaning, and belonging. In the work that we did, we acknowledged the role of our elders and the importance of traditional knowledge and of ceremony. Elders taught us about respect and about the importance of balance. They also taught us about being connected to all things and all people. Culture was and is healing. Traditional knowledge and ceremony served as guides and as an answer for people to live the best life. One questions asked for our feather carry trainings was, who are you? Where did you come from? And where are you going? I can say without a doubt, this program, being part of it, of this group, I know who I am, I know where I came from, and I know where I'm going. Being a feather carrier helped on a personal level. I do work a lot with elders and my personal family. And it gave me all the things that I needed and I hoped for. Purpose, hope, meaning, and belonging. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Gail. And Ed, you worked alongside the team as a coach and a mentor, and I just invite you to add any reflections from your coaching hat.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Maria. And thank you to Gail for those last words and those thoughts, because it brings to mind the time that we did spend together. As we share out this journey, you know, it's about not only sharing about the journey that we had collectively with the organization that is now referred to as Health Excellence Canada, but it was most importantly sharing the journey and that we had with the communities, as we shared out the concepts that have been spoken of about life promotion and that shift that's going on currently in our Indigenous communities across the country, as we move and shift the paradigm or the thinking from a focus on suicide prevention to a focus on life promotion, and not doing away with suicide prevention at the time of need, but rather expanding that understanding out to focus on bringing all that we know into effect to support life. And that's, of course, how we began when I spoke and offered the opening address. But in this case, we had an incredible experience of an opportunity as the community of the Halabu Mi'kmaq people invited us to come and share what we know about life promotion from the work we've been doing with feather carriers, Leadership for Life Promotion, which we offer now across the country. But I can recall that one of the most powerful moments was when we joined together on the first day, and we joined in ceremony on the ocean, and we stood and had a fire going, and we did a sunrise ceremony to greet the day. And as we did that, we joined with all these folks who were coming together to do this work, to learn about what is life promotion. And as we did that, the sun rose and it shined upon the mountains behind us and created this incredible gold glow on the mountains behind us. And we were standing in circle right on the water's edge. And as those facing, some of us saw the sun light the mountainside. Others were facing out to the water, and they saw two seals pop their heads up, and they stayed there and watched us as we conducted that ceremony. The significance of that ceremony is far more than just the ceremony in itself. It's a significance in that the Mi'kmaq people are coming after a long period of time to reclaim their identities in Newfoundland. And that process is an incredible journey that they are currently on, that we only shared with them some of our knowledge of our journey of reclaiming our Indigenous identities. And we did so by bringing to them what we know in ceremony, such as that sunrise ceremony. But as we did that, the words from my colleague John Rice were shared with them and reminded them that in the Anishinaabe teachings of the Seven Fires prophecy, that the beginning of the Seven Fires prophecy speaks of the journey of the Anishinaabe people from the East Coast, and that they journeyed as they knew that over time the colonizers would come, change would occur, and the Anishinaabe people moved all the way out onto the prairies. The teachings of the seventh fire speaks of the seventh fire lighting potentially the eighth fire. If we can come to this time when we can bring our knowledge together, and if those who are non-Indigenous can also recognize and respect the Indigenous knowledge that has been here for time immemorial, and that we come and utilize that knowledge collectively for the benefit of all. As we brought that, those words were being said and reminding those as we were in ceremony there, that this was bringing back those teachings, returning to that time and lighting that fire, potentially the eighth fire. So perhaps, you can understand then in vision we've created for you and shared with you the significance of what this journey has been. It's far greater and far deeper than perhaps we even can put into words at this time. Thank you. Miigwech now.
Thanks so much, Ed and Gail and Cindy. And I think, a great segue into talking a bit more about what we collectively have learned and are learning about two-eyed seeing and the approach and the importance of taking time and creating space to understand different worldviews and to embrace them and to use that knowledge together, as you said, with and for people going forward. And that very powerful shift from thinking about the priority of this work and collaborative of being preventing suicide, to being about promoting life together. And the lessons learned and the impacts that continue to grow from that. And the engagement that we had with Thunderbird Partnership Foundation and First Peoples Wellness Circle was really important, and then led to the development of a guidance group for the Promoting Life Together Collaborative, and strengthen and maintain Indigenous voices, and then leading Promoting Life Together Collaborative and facilitating this two-eyed seeing approach, which we're going to talk a little bit about more now, starting with a clip from you, Ed.
There's also concepts in here that also speak to, in a way, to some of the things we even know now that have come from other nations, other First Nations. You've heard reference to the two-eyed seeing, right? Two-eyed seeing can be said to be the representation of the ways that each of these ways know, how they see things, what their knowledge is. But we also know within the two-eyed seeing, right, that again, there can also be understood that we're on that common river of life. And that common river of life actually can be understood, as a place of what some of our other elders have spoken to, which is the common ethical space, or the place where we can come to know and how we can use both eyes, right, and both knowledges in a good way. But what do we need? We need to have that equal relationship to be able to do that. What I believe happened in our relationship in the work with CFHI is that we came to the place of coming to understand some of these basic understandings of good relationship and how to do that, how to create it and work on it in such a way that we could not only learn to do that with one another, but then to share it with others, as we did through the collaborative with the communities that we worked with. As we went out into the communities after we had first established those relationships with one another, we did so with individuals from CFHI who came to share with us the experiences of sharing our knowledge, Indigenous knowledge, with the communities that we worked with through the understanding of life promotion. And they not only witnessed what we were doing, but they participated in that sharing of the knowledge.
Ed, I'm going to invite you if you'd like to share any additional reflections, as we're really talking about how non-Indigenous organizations can help ensure that there is equity of Indigenous perspectives and respect for Indigenous knowledge as they work alongside First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples.
Sure. So I mentioned a word in there that is essential. If we're going to find a way to use all the knowledge Creator has given us in the ways I believe that the Creator has intended us to, we have to find the ways to actually then recognize that as much as we have commonalities that draw us together, and that those commonalities are what is the the basis of our relationships with one another. It is what is common, what draws us together. We have to first see that and acknowledge that first, because what happens too often today amongst humans is that I've been reflecting on this most recently because of all of the things going on in the world today, that seems to be drawing us into focusing our attention on difference as opposed to on commonality, on what is it that brings us together? What is it that unites us? What is it what are the common factors that make us human? And then from there, acknowledge and recognize difference. And as we do and recognize difference, then to do so with respect for the differences that we hold. And when we do that, we need to do that with an understanding of equality. One of my elders shared with me a teaching, and I'll shorten it because it was a longer teaching, but I call it the ant story. And it's very simply said that we were sitting one day and he was sharing some teachings, and as he was teaching me something, he stopped in mid-sentence and he looked down below my chair, and I followed his eyes to below my chair, and there's this ant crawling under my chair into the circle we had created of chairs where we were sharing teachings. And he looked at the ant and he said, "See that ant?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "He's my brother." And I just looked at him and he said, "He's no greater than I, and I no greater than him. We're brothers." And then he said, when we can come to that time again, when we can reform that type of mind, then we'll know how to have peace on earth. And that peace was amongst primarily human people, amongst humans. We have the greatest struggle to be able to find that way to live in peace with one another. We've done it, and we've done it in the past, and we have knowledge, especially amongst them from our indigenous knowledge, that tells us how to do that. We need to use that again, and we need to use it with the ways that I've spoken of, in respect and equality with each other. Nothing greater than, nothing less than. When we change the mind from that, then we probably will find the ways to once again then work together collectively as we have in the past and been able to in the past. So yeah, those are some of my reflections on, what it is. And I believe we achieved much of that, as I said in that clip, in our work, in our relationships with one another, with our Indigenous leadership, our Indigenous organizations, with HEC, short form for Health Excellence Canada, and with our Indigenous communities. And it was not just our Indigenous communities, it was Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities. The people that were part of this, as you've mentioned at the very beginning, we all work together on this. The people from HEC came with us to the communities and participated in these times where we did the teachings and sharings together. And so they were learning as they went as well, and were open to that learning, and did so in a very respectful way. So, as we form that kind of relationship, I think we can transform, how we are in relationship with one another across the country, and specifically as we speak about it here in healthcare. But these are fundamentals that we need to address if we're going to achieve that. And I believe we can, because we know historically in the past, we've been able to do that. So this is why I believe that the knowledge of the past and the Indigenous knowledge is so important to guide us forward into the future.
Thanks so much, Ed. And I'm going to invite Cindy to add any reflections or encouragements, particularly for non-Indigenous organizations as they're thinking about two-eyed seeing and this work, and how to ensure that there is that equitable space and ethical space created going forwards.
Absolutely. The concept of the two-eye seeing was really valuable to our work moving forward, and acknowledging the role that culture has in a person's well-being, and really being able to take the concepts that we understood from the feather carrier's perspective, and learning more about Indigenous ancestry in Newfoundland and Labrador, and the role of Mi'kmaq culture, how that has impacted people moving forward, and really taken those concepts of purpose, hope, meaning, and belonging, and how they can really be incorporated into any work that you do, regardless of your cultural background. That everybody needs, purpose, hope, meaning, and belonging in their life in order to live the best life that they can, and in order to choose life.
Thanks, Cindy. Bill, I wanted to invite you if you'd like to add any reflections as we're, talking about reflecting on two-eyed seeing together.
I'd be pleased to say a few comments. Over a decade ago, I listened to Willie Ermine describe ethical space and its application. As he talked, I imagined a space shared by two distinct and different worldviews in a conversation, a reciprocal conversation about health and wellness, each doing knowledge translation work, figuring out how to work together, building on strengths of the community being served. I provide that as a context for my comments about what I view as essentials for crafting such shared work with an Indigenous community. And I think it's important to point out that in many ways, the way we go about living our lives and doing things is virtually non-formal, more relaxed and natural. And also is done in a way where there's an absence of judgment, which is a really important point, because our purpose in life really is to always be oriented towards giving support and understanding and love and encouragement to move toward living a better life and enjoying satisfaction as a collective of people, not as individuals, but as families and groups of families and communities. And some of the highlights of those essentials, as I see it, is one, of course, that Ed described really well, is cultural humility. The tremendous importance of being no more important than that little ant or any other insect or other things of nature that we live with at all times. Always being attentive to listening carefully to the voices of all things of the Creator, and to do what we can to understand them in order to be able to continue a way of life that brings some satisfaction to everyone. I find in our work as Indigenous people, working with non-Indigenous people, that it's very important for, if I could see, okay, I was trying to read the message there. It's very important that we be interested in the community the people themselves have. And if we're looking at working together collaboratively, it would be important to have them take you on a tour of the community and to share with you the meaningfulness of the land and the marks on the land and the indications of other things that really reflect the teachings of ancestors and the essence of the language and culture. In that interaction as well, it's really important for each of us in our own way to speak from the heart as much as we can, because that's such a much stronger source of truth and understanding and meaningfulness in our Indigenous communities. In our work with the collaborative, we identified principles that would be important to follow, and I certainly find that it's essential that we follow a list of things like that, where we accept Indigenous knowledge as having truth and substance and to be believable, to speak from the heart, to listen carefully to all the voices that are being spoken, to look at reality in terms of the cultural dimensions and the values of them. It's important to be intuitive, to promote, when you could, understanding of what it is we're learning from each other, and to value and respect anyone who becomes your partner or supporter. And I think the final thing is that to acknowledge when we can and appreciate new ways of learning. The talking circles, to reflection is a really important one, and to encourage each other to reflect as a way of getting in touch with more of the questions that we might be asking or wondering about, and acknowledging new ways of learning. With these new ways of learning, we move along better in developing the relationships and the understanding necessary for us as two distinctly different cultures to identify the strengths that we each possess, the values, and how we might be able to use them in our work with an Indigenous community. And the final point I want to make is that these essentials, if they're honored, truly honor cultural safety, which has become a very important concept in our life and work over the last decade and more. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bill. As you know, really so much of our time together and the reflections and lessons have been about how through the Promoting Life Together collaborative, there was an opportunity to embrace and pull together Indigenous and non-Indigenous knowledge, points of view, and that really led to that shift as you and Ed and Cindy and Gail and others and Despina, from the Western notion of suicide prevention to embracing aspects of hope, purpose, meaning, and belonging, and fostering life promotion together. And this approach led to so many shifts in our ways of working in language and actions, and how we go forward. And we just want to share another clip from Bill Muscle, building on the idea of these shifting paradigms and creating ethical spaces.
Willie Ermine, a colleague who I've met, who was teaching in Saskatchewan and now basically retired, but still working hard, introduced the concept of ethical space. It's a concept very much connected with the importance of dialogue between culturally diverse people, in generally English-speaking and Indigenous-speaking people. And the concept of ethical space really is designed, it's a paradigm designed to facilitate and bring about a meaningful relationship development and meaningful communication that would result in a mutual understanding of what it is that we need to do together, and how important it is that we feel safe enough with each other to take the risks of speaking from the heart. And beginning to learn by doing that speaking from the heart really helps us to supplement what it is that we're sharing, that accesses the ability to think and reason, to rely upon the power of the brain. And that when we can begin to relate in that way as people, as I see it, we're able to begin to draw on the energy and resources of other people, including ourselves in the circumstance, but upon other people that some of our elders really describe as being accessing the spiritual dimensions of life.
Thanks so much, Bill. And so now I'm going to invite our panelists just for their additional reflections on this idea we've been talking about creating ethical spaces and paradigm shifts, and how those, how creating ethical spaces and the paradigm shifts that occurred during the work of the Promoting Life Together collaborative. Bill, anything you'd like to add or share reflecting on the work of the Promoting Life Together collaborative that was really essential in creating Ethical Space.
I'd like to share a few thoughts on your question. I think it's really important as thought leaders working on challenges like this to recognize and appreciate that we can only teach what we have taught ourselves. And I think that's a very important point in our work, because our ways of learning as Indigenous people and the importance of knowledge and how it is created is quite different in many ways from the Euro-Western way of going about it. And it's in the process of learning how to learn that we come to know and we come to create knowledge. And other aspects of paradigm shifts that I recognize as being really important is always in what we're doing to focus on strengths. And that activity reconnects people. It includes reconnecting people with themselves, getting to know themselves as their best friend, for example, someone to interact with and share communications with. That will help you to better appreciate who you are and what you are and who you belong to. Your personal history is another dimension of that, focusing on strengths, learning about family and community, and the importance of land to all of our lives because of our ancestors and the way in which the land was created and the people created and Mother Earth and this planet that we live on. Relationships, a really important point, are the carrying vehicle for knowledge, enfolded knowledge, and that is the knowledge that you've created yourself through your own search for understanding. I mentioned earlier the importance of valuing the guiding principles that we develop for our collaborative work that really highlights the importance of looking upon Indigenous ways, Indigenous knowledge as strengths, and very much strengths that connect really easily with health and wellness. And health and wellness becoming a challenge that really nicely and naturally brings us together as Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in this land. Other aspects is to come to know culture as healing, to be much more than entertainment and talent and so on, but really looking at it very practically in regard to living life and the importance of grieving and healing and being able to renew ourselves. Other points, a couple of them. The First Nations mental wellness model that has been shared and developed by the Thunderbird Partnership Foundation is a very important model because it's strengths-based and it speaks to the importance of hope and purpose and belonging and meaning as outcomes in regard to the work. And I'm pleased that different departments of the federal government and other federal organizations are expressing an interest in learning what they can about that model because of its application. And in many ways, it's very compatible with what it is we're learning by working in a collaborative as we've done. A big item that we all, I think, need to appreciate because that's what we're seeing over and over again today is relationship is process. And it's those relationships that bring us to new ways of thinking, new ways of seeing, new ways of performing, and actually new ways of extending diversity. I think is really an important thing to consider. And that includes shifting our ways of working in the collaborative or in the group with which Denise and I work. We certainly lived with the example of scrapping the agenda. Let's simply sit on the floor, get together in a little group and get to know each other as human beings who have life experiences and who have things to share and to learn by sharing them. And through that process, it's a new way of learning and a really important one that does work well. And the final point I think is really important is as we learn about Indigenous ways as being health promoting and as life promoting, it's life promoting because you're living life as a subject of life. You're the one who's the doer. You're making choices. You're making suggestions. You're giving support to others, and you're working whatever in every possible way you can to help make a positive difference in life. And that's really what promoting life is all about. And everything about hope, belonging, meaning, and purpose. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Bill. Cindy, as you reflect on the work that you did, both as part of the Promoting Life Together Collaborative and the work that you're doing now with team, what would be your reflections to add about what's essential in creating ethical spaces and how that supports cultural safety?
The work that we did and our participation in the collaborative certainly taught us a lot of lessons. And I guess the highlights of what came out of our work was, in addition to, obviously the notions of culture is healing and, recognizing the importance of traditional knowledge, spirituality, and ceremony in the work that we do as social workers and psychologists and healthcare providers. It also, the shift in language from suicide prevention to life promotion certainly has shifted the way that we, in our documentation, in our health promotion initiatives within Western Health. The other thing that also came out of it was really the creation of culturally safe spaces, being able to, have more of an Indigenous presence in the waiting rooms, like our waiting room here in the office that I work in. We display the posters that it was displayed on one of the slides, the artwork that was created from the work that we've done. That's displayed in the main entrance, and that creates a lot of conversations, and it shows people that it's a culturally safe space. There's more Indigenous artwork and stuff being displayed in buildings. In addition to that, staff are trained. We've created a partnership with the Newfoundland Aboriginal Women's Network, so all staff within mental health and addiction services continue, and there's been a continued commitment on that for new staff to participate in the cultural sensitivity training and to become more aware of the history of Indigenous peoples in Newfoundland and Labrador, but also in this region. And then, of course, the biggest highlight, I guess, has been the partnerships that we've developed and continue to maintain with Indigenous groups in the communities, and also for Indigenous groups to know more about our services, but for our service providers to also know more about Indigenous services and ways to connect people to different groups and organizations and cultural programming within the area.
Thanks so much, Cindy. And we have a question from Joanna in the chat, which I'm going to read out, and then I'm going to invite Bill and then Ed and then Cindy and or Gail if you'd like to respond to the question. And so Joanna is sharing that development of a primary care network is underway on the Sunshine Coast in BC, and so far separates different potential partners in that work. It's early days, and just looking for your guidance or advice on how to help create more of a working together and have, instead of having, she's called it the two solitudes of community and nation. So maybe Bill, I'll invite you to respond and share your thoughts in response to Joanna's question. And thank you, Joanna, for sharing that with us.
The question is a very practical question. And the first thing that comes to my mind is the importance of building some kind of bridges, building the kind of connections with each other where you could begin to build and use it as a bridge. And by building bridges, what we're doing is building relationships and doing it in a way where it offers promise of something new to all parties. And that something new, as I see it, really has to do with contributing to health and wellness that we share in common as human beings. And I think it would be important then for us to contact a few people we know in the other community that we know are interested in what we're doing, and to begin to talk with those people about how you could work together in the interests of both communities, and to do it in ways that will engage more and more people over time, but in activities that they themselves, that everyone engaged in the process will discover new ways of being and doing and enjoying, learning ways of each of their cultures, not just one culture contributing, but both cultures, and also what two cultures together in terms of sharing what it is you know and what you've learned can also identify additional things that would be engaging for the people. And I think Ed's story about who we are as creatures of the Creator, and living with the humility and living without judgment, and the importance of always doing everything we can to be supportive and caring and understanding, will help bring us, I think, towards the lifestyle shared together that your project indicates as being the most desirable outcome. Thank you for those few minutes.
Thanks, Bill. And I just want to invite you, if you want to share any advice or learnings or reflections on how we really create opportunities to bring a strengths-based, two-eyed seeing approach to supporting health, really.
Thanks, Maria. Yeah, I would just say ditto to everything that Bill just said. I would say if you reflect on and you do have the opportunity to continue to learn from this webinar that we're sharing, because I believe it's being recorded and it is available to go back and listen to and reflect on, I would encourage that, because what we're sharing now in the journey that we've actually had is an answer to the question that you've just asked. And in fact, our journey, is in fact an example of how potentially this can be done, how you can do what you're wanting to do. And if you study it carefully, and we're sharing this out in many forms, not just in this webinar, there's going to be other forms of knowledge sharing that we're doing around the experiences that we've had in this collaborative. And that's the purpose of it, to help to share out what we've learned so that you can actually then utilize what we have done and that we have found to be quite useful, successful in many different ways. That in fact, it's a model for what you're seeking. So I would encourage you to continue to learn from what we're learning, and we're more than willing, as we to share that with you in many different forms if you should choose to want to explore it further with us as we go.
Thanks, Ed. There's another question. Thanks, Rick, for your question, which is, how are we protecting against cultural appropriation? And I know there's been lots of discussion about that and really thoughtful approaches developed, a knowledge sharing protocol, and just invite Ed, if you'd like to speak to that.
Well, that was in fact one of the first things. Good to hear from you, Rick, by the way. Good question, as always. So that was, in fact, where we began this journey, Rick. We began with trying to form the relationship that's being spoken of just in the question before. But as we began to form the relationship, that was one of the first things that we had to attend to. And in fact, interestingly enough, even as it was a bit of a struggle at first to get that clarified and understood. Again, took all of what Bill spoke about in terms of the form of dialogue we had to have with, at that time, CFHI, which is now HEC. And as we did that, then they came to understand what our concerns were. And they were very open, of course, in the ways that Bill described, to understanding what the issues were. And ultimately, what we came to was a methodology, which actually exists in terms of utilization of law, where we created an agreement that was basically created with their lawyers and our lawyer to represent, to create an agreement that would state what we needed to have happen and how it would be then enacted. So we did it. We did it through conversation, through dialogue, and actually through some actual formal mechanisms of creating an agreement. I guess you could say a modern day agreement. I started off with the two-row, which is our way of creating treaties of the past from 1613, speaking to, again, development of that relationship. We then embodied that in a form of a current day legal agreement, which of course is a form of treaty making. So those are the things that I know that we did. And I do know that was carried, and not just as a written agreement, but was shared out and was a fundamental piece of what our understanding was when we created principles that we worked upon throughout the collaborative. So we then expressed what that agreement means in principles of action, which we then shared out throughout the collaborative in our work in all relationships, everyone that we formed, so that they understood what our agreements were about and why they were. Yeah, so hopefully that helps.
Thanks so much, Ed, and it's some great questions coming through the chat, and I'm going to invite our colleagues just to reshare, if possible, through the chat, the links to where, as Ed and Bill and Cindy and Gail and Despina have reflected, there are many resources sharing some of the lessons learned, and encouraging others and providing some suggestions and advice as you are embarking on your journeys and partnership development, working together to improve the experiences and the outcomes of healthcare with and for more people across the country. And I just want to thank our panelists for joining us today for the really, rich discussion and reflections. Really, our desire in sharing this story of the Promoting Life Together Collaborative is that we feel many people across the country and the teams and the guidance group members and the coaches that we've learned so much about how to work together in a strengths-based ways, in understanding what does two-eyed seeing look like, and early on, but lots more to learn, but wanted to share some of what we've learned on this journey, starting with responding to the needs identified in northern communities about how do we work together to respond in different ways. So we began this discussion in ceremony, and we'd like to end it now in a good way through ceremony as well. And I'd like to invite Ed to lead us in a closing prayer.
Okay, thank you, Maria. So the closing prayer that I offer, again, is coming full circle from where we began, with giving thanks to Creator for all of the gifts of creation that support our life and our life's journey. I also wanted to say, as we come together in concluding this sharing today, that I need to recognize not only the gifts Creator has given to us and given to me of life, and all of the forms of life that Creator has created that support our life and our life's journey, but I also need to recognize and give thanks to Creator for the knowledge that Creator has given to us on our life's journeys. Much of what we have talked about here today, the knowledge that enables us to, in fact, develop a way of living that promotes life, a long and good life. And that knowledge does exist within all of our ancestries. And I suggest that that there's wisdom that we need to continue to reflect upon and go back to understand what knowledge has formed that helps us to know how to live a long and good life today. That is life promotion. From our Indigenous ancestry and from my Indigenous ancestry, I recognize again the kinds of things that we talked about today, about how do we form the relationships that are life promoting, is embedded within the knowledge of our ancestors, and it was passed forward to us. What I shared with you earlier at the beginning spoke of the two-row wampum. The two-row wampum was the ways in which our ancestors, my Haudenosaunee ancestors, the wampums, were ways in which we made peace with one another. We created treaties, agreements with one another to develop relationships of peace, because we had many people with many differences, but yet we have developed the ability to be able to find the commonalities, to be able to then establish these kinds of peaceful relationships and utilized skills that we had developed and been passed on to our ancestors over times. So things we talked about today about the knowledge of things and indigenous knowledge such that now comes forward in such forms as what we call ethical space, common ethical space. We talk about it also in things like the two-eyed seeing. Elder Albert Marshall from his Mi'kmaq had brought that idea forward from his people, from his ancestors who had passed that forward about how to use that knowledge that comes from different ways of seeing in order to then enhance your ability to live a long and good life. That is essentially what lies within what I shared with you in some of the film clips you saw of the 2-row. That's what's there. It was about how to create that relationship with people who came here, who we saw as very different from ourselves. Once again, my ancestry now lies within both sides of the 2-row, as I said when I began. So I give thanks to Creator for those gifts, the gifts of life and the gifts of knowledge and the gifts that enhance our ability to live long and good lives, not just as an individual, but in relationship with everyone and everything. And as I continue to give thanks to Creator for that, I share that with you in the hopes that what we're sharing is also helping you to find a way to live a long and good life and live in peace with all of creation, with Creator. For these gifts, we're grateful. For this day, we're grateful. We say Miigwech, Nyawa, Nyawa, all our relations. Aho.
Thank you so much, Ed, for closing us in a good way. And also want to add my thanks to Bill and Cindy and Gail for sharing your experiences and reflections. And of course, a thanks to the webinar team, to Kelly and the Northern Indigenous Health team here at Healthcare Excellence Canada, HEC, also known as HEC. And of course, thank you to each of you for joining us today, for sharing your time with us. We hope you found today's session engaging and valuable. If you haven't already done so, we invite you and encourage you to visit our website and to read more about the story of the Promoting Life Together Collaborative. There are many resources there, as our speakers have said, interviews with members of the guidance group and the different teams, a 45-minute video which shares more of our journey together and lessons learned and reflections that we hope will be helpful to others as well. We'd like to hear from you on today's session. There's a quick poll that's up on your screen now. Your feedback's really invaluable to us as we plan for future webinars and topics. So please take a moment before you log off and share some feedback with us. This concludes today's events. Reminder that our session has been recorded and will be made available via Healthcare Excellence Canada's events page in the coming days. We also invite you to reach out to any staff member at Healthcare Excellence Canada if you have questions or resources you'd like to share as we all look to journey forwards together in a new way. Thank you for sharing your time with us today, and take care as you move through your day.